Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today I'm going to be talking about the types of people in social isolation. The first type I'm going to talk about is one I'm calling the Homesteader. Basically, it's someone who's dealing with the quarantine by acting like they've been transported back in time to some sort of pastoral life that their ancestors probably lived. They're basically just baking all day, like they're just baking bread. They're probably also trying out or picking back up some sort of grandma hobby like embroidery or knitting. It's like all the pressure from what's going on in the outside world has turned them into some sort of wholesome Ghibli character who only needs to worry about feeding their sourdough starter and maybe maintaining the right moisture level in their self-sustaining moss terrarium. Maybe they're thinking about getting some pet snails. It's basically just like all the cottagecore kids got really hardcore into it and are basically pretending that they're living out like a fairy tale life, which I can totally identify with, even though I don't think I've ever made bread. Maybe banana bread, but that's on a whole nother level. Honestly, it's hard for me to imagine a more wholesome way to deal with the stress of quarantine, so I would say out of all the types, this is definitely the most wholesome, maybe cutest of all of them. Honestly, I wish I was like this. I wish my house was filled with bread, but unfortunately I can't even get the basics to make bread where I live right now because people are hoarding so much. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't become this type, which is really unfortunate. My sister's kind of falling into this though. I actually called her up not that long ago to play video games with me, and she was too busy baking bread to play. So if that's not emblematic of this type, I don't know what is. This type probably is staying away from technology as much as they can, and are only probably using it to make like a really aesthetic like baking TikTok or something, or maybe they're trying out that like coffee foam drink that everyone's trying to make that's like you have to like use instant coffee and then stir it like 1,000 times. This type is basically the more lighthearted version of another protective type I'm going to talk about later, but basically they're just trying to funnel their boredom and anxiousness into bread dough and meticulous little tasks that they probably didn't have time for in the before times. The next type I'm going to talk about is the Socialite. Now, this is the type of person who, honestly, I can't identify with at all, but basically someone who really thrived on social interaction with lots of different people, extroverts, people who like to party and dance and basically just love to be around other people. They are probably doing the worst out of almost everybody, except maybe for the last type on this list. But the way that a lot of these socialites seem to be coping, other than copious video chats and like games that you can play remotely with friends, is by doing full faces of extremely intense makeup in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. They also might be sadly wearing what they were going to wear to prom if their prom was canceled, which I know is happening for a lot of seniors in high school right now. I really feel for you guys. That's gotta be super frustrating. Like, even if you weren't excited about prom, to not even get the chance to go is really a bummer. I know a lot of them are doing like 5 outfits a day, like just sort of trying stuff on, basically treating their own life like a dress-up doll game and trying to keep their minds busy with that. But I think a lot of their time is probably being spent just like staring into the mirror, contemplating how long they can last without actually having human contact with anyone other than their family and or roommates, and they're probably going to be the ones who are the most tempted to break quarantine and see just a few friends. But you gotta stay strong, socialites. There's only going to be longer and longer restrictions on what we can all do if we, like fudge the rules and, like see other people outside of who we're supposed to be seeing, just because it'll get worse and worse unless we all follow the rules. So I really feel for you guys, and your makeup looks look great. Keep posting them on the internet because they're really inspiring and they make me actually want to get ready for the day instead of just lounging around in my pajamas knowing that I can't go anywhere. Next up is the gamer / like anime fan. I really want to throw out like an old reference from, I think it was The Dark Knight. I didn't actually see it. It's the one with Bane, but he basically says at one point like, oh, you think you're about darkness, Mr. Batman? I was born from darkness. I'm pretty sure that's a word for word quote from that movie. But Basically, this is the type of person who was born from isolation. Like, there are some people who are truly thriving from the fact that they can't go anywhere, because it takes all the pressure off of them to force themselves to go to like social outings and stuff, and now they can truly enjoy their hobbies and just like throw themselves into either gaming or watching anime or just generally like doing introvert stuff that they have always wanted to have the time to like really sink into. It's basically giving a bunch of people the chance to do a trial run of being like a hikikomori, like a total shut-in, and just like living their life, sleeping, eating, and then like enjoying their hobby. If they're a competitive gamer and they like to play games online, they have either increased their SR to the highest that it's been in a long time or maybe ever, or it has dropped multiple ranks and they are doing extremely bad. There is no in between. They have either skyrocketed or fallen to the absolute floor. If they're not that type of gamer, they're probably just playing Animal Crossing as soon as they wake up to the moment that they fall asleep. Their whole village is probably looking so incredible. Like, their island is probably terraformed and ready for like a whole like city basically of villagers to live on there. They probably have all kinds of custom paths just winding everywhere, and it's like the most aesthetically pleasing thing that your eyes have ever seen. They are almost certainly nocturnal by now. They probably had nocturnal tendencies before, but normal life always kept them slightly in check and awake during some daylight hours. Now they're basically going to sleep when the sun comes up and waking up in the late afternoon, and fixing that sleep schedule when all of these restrictions lift is going to be almost impossible, honestly. So good luck to you, gamers. I wish you the very best. The next type I want to talk about is the time skipper. Basically, I'm calling them that because they essentially are trying to reinvent themselves during this period where they're not seeing other people. They want to come out of this quarantine with a six-pack of abs, a new language under their belt, and basically all of their bad habits to be broken. They kind of want to become the perfect version of themselves during this time and are probably extremely type A. They're probably making to-do lists literally every day and being more strict with themselves than daily life was before all of this started. They're probably drinking like a gallon of water a day, doing some sort of insane like challenge to do, I don't know, some amount of crunches or something. I've been seeing a lot of exercise challenges going around. So they're probably doing a couple of those. They're probably trying to learn how to cook, but not like the Homesteader. They're not baking for pleasure. They're trying to learn how to cook to be a better, more evolved, more adult person, and also probably to cook really healthy meals so that they can sculpt their abs into basically the shape of challah bread. This type is essentially probably the type who did really well before quarantine. Like, they probably did well in school or their job, but the quarantine is really going to show them how the structure of daily life actually is holding them back, because when they're left to their own devices, they turn into some sort of completely insane cannonball of constant productivity. So honestly, these are probably the type of people who are finishing all their schoolwork in like a couple hours if they are still in school, or if they're out of school, they're probably just realizing how much more time they have in the day when they don't have to commute and deal with other people at their job. It's going to give them a really interesting perspective, and they're definitely going to kind of come out of the quarantine with a whole new outlook on life. They'll probably feel sort of like rejuvenated in a way, though maybe a little bit bummed out about how life actually slows them down. The last type I want to talk about is the prepper. Essentially, this is the person who's going into the grocery stores and buying 500 different things of toilet paper and basically every basic food or, necessity that they need. They're just like stacking it all up in their house. When they're not doing that, they're anxiously reading probably Facebook articles about how the disease is definitely coming for them and is going to kill them any moment now, and how the world is about to end and the economy can't survive this. And basically they're just turning into this cannonball of anxiety and like anxious consumerism, buying and hoarding all the resources for themselves, because as far as they're concerned, the apocalypse is starting and it's every man for themselves now. They don't consider it selfish. They're literally just fully in like Mad Max anarchy apocalypse mode. They're probably being pretty mean to the essential workers that they run into at the stores and delivering food and stuff to them because they're anxious, but it still does not make it okay. Everyone should be extra nice to everyone who has to work right now because they don't even get the luxury of being one of these types because they don't get isolated like the rest of us, and they're risking their lives for us. So we should all be really, really kind to everyone who still has to work. And honestly, I really wish people would stop hoarding everything because I just moved and I don't have so many basic things and I can't get them anymore. So it's really, really bad. Please stop hoarding things, preppers. It's gonna be okay. If we just follow the rules, everything will be fine after a while. So that was all the types that I've noticed of how people are dealing with social isolation. Let me know if you kind of vibe with any of these or if you're coping a completely different way. I hope you're doing well regardless, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you to all of my patrons, including Bald-Headed Potato, Bella Story, Best Kaiju, Braggy, Calpumpunk, Lion, Don't Eat Soap, Dr. Casket, Ilaria Louie, Eric G, Greer the Animator, Griffix, Hachiyubi, Ice Cream Pal, Ivan Rodriguez, JJJ, Joseph Copel, Leblevleblem, Marina Costa, Mr. Dr. Pants, Nicole Ludwak, Nicolette Queen, Nora Cornelison, Ruin Wayne Crow, Some Mediocre Artists, the RC Moose, Throat Foam, XAM, and your boy ST.